Let's get straight to the point. You're standing outside a theatre box, listening to laughter drift through the door, and in about 90 seconds, you're going to fail at the only job that matters. A man will walk past you. You'll let him. The President of the United States will take a bullet to the back of the head, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you were 3 feet away when it happened. But before you understand how you got here, you have to understand where you came from. You grow up in the kind of poverty that teaches you math early, the arithmetic of how many meals you can skip before you collapse, how many hours of sleep a body truly needs, how to make a single pair of shoes last through 2 winters. Your father dies when you're 14. Cholera. Your mother follows 6 months later. Grief, the doctor says, but you know it was hunger dressed up in a cleaner diagnosis. You're alone at 15, with calloused hands and the understanding that the world doesn't owe you survival. You enlist. The war needs bodies and you need 3 meals a day. You're good at following orders, better at staying quiet. You learn that in the army, anonymity is a competitive advantage. The loud ones get promoted or killed, but the quiet ones just keep surviving. You survive Antietam. You survive Fredericksburg. You survive everything the Confederacy throws at you. And when it's finally over, you have a rifle you know how to use and absolutely no idea what to do next. That's when the letter comes. The War Department is forming a new unit, Executive Protection. You're selected based on your record, which is to say, you didn't die and you didn't desert, putting you in the top percentile of candidates. The pay is decent, the work is stable, you accept before you finish reading, you meet him on a Tuesday. President Lincoln is taller than you expected and more tired than any man should look while still breathing. He shakes your hand with the kind of attention that makes you feel for just a moment like you matter. You're assigned to his detail, close protection, which sounds prestigious until you realize it means standing in hallways for 16 hours while important people have important conversations you're not allowed to hear. The job is 90% boredom, 9% political theatre, and 1% actual danger that never quite materializes. You get good at reading rooms, at spotting the man who doesn't belong, at positioning yourself between the president and anything that feels wrong. You take it seriously because you've seen what happens when people don't, the kind of chaos that erupts when the center doesn't hold. The other guards joke about it. Protecting honest Abe, they say, like it's a punchline. Like the war isn't still smouldering. Like there aren't men in every shadow who trade their souls for a clear shot. You don't joke. You've been poor enough to know that when someone pays you to do something, you do it completely, or you don't deserve the wage. He notices. Lincoln. He learns your name, which is more than most commanders ever did. Sometimes late at night, when you're posted outside his office, he'll open the door and offer you coffee. You accept because refusing feels worse than the breach of protocol. He asks about your family. You tell him the truth, that they're dead, that the war took what disease didn't finish. He nods like he understands. Maybe he does. He's buried a son. Grief recognizes grief. You start to realize something dangerous. You don't just work for him. You believe in him. That's the trap. In executive protection, emotional investment is a liability. You're supposed to be a human shield, not a partisan, but you can't help it. You've watched him navigate a fractured country with the kind of exhausted grace that only comes from carrying weight that would crush smaller men. You've seen him pardon deserters who don't deserve it and agonize over battlefield reports like, each name is a personal failure. He's not perfect, he's a politician, which means he's a liar by trade, but he's trying to do something that matters. And you're the man standing between him and the people who want him dead. The threats come in daily. Letters describing creative methods of assassination, tips about plots that dissolve into paranoia when investigated. The Confederacy is collapsing, but collapse makes men desperate, and desperate men are the most dangerous kind. Your unit takes it all seriously. You sweep venues, you vary routes, You maintain sightlines, it's textbook security protocol, and it works right up until the moment it doesn't. April 14th, 1865, Ford's Theatre. The president wants to see a play. Our American cousin, light comedy. The war's over, Lee surrendered 5 days ago, and he needs something that isn't death and diplomacy. Mrs. Lincoln will accompany him. Your unit will provide security. Standard detail. You've done this 100 times. You sweep the theatre that afternoon. The box is elevated. Good sightlines. One entrance. Solid door with a lock. You'll post yourself outside. Nobody gets past you without authorization. It's as secure as you can make it without cancelling the event entirely, and you know that's not an option. The man has lived in a cage of caution for 4 years. He deserves one night of normalcy. The performance starts at 8. You take position outside the box. You can hear the play through the door. Laughter, applause, the rhythm of entertainment you're not part of. Your job is the hallway. Your job is watching the stairs. Your job is making sure nobody unauthorized gets close. Here's the thing about security work. It's 99% nothing, and the 1% happens faster than you can process. You get comfortable in the nothing. You start to believe the nothing is permanent. A man approaches, well-dressed, confident. He's moving like he belongs, which is the first sign of danger you're trained to recognize, but he's also moving in the open, which is what innocent people do. He's holding something, a card, you think, though later you won't remember clearly. He says he has a message for the president. He says it's urgent. You hesitate. That's the moment. That's where it happens. That split second where you're calculating whether the risk of disturbing the president outweighs the risk of turning away someone legitimate. The man is insistent but not aggressive. He has the bearing of someone connected. You've been trained to facilitate access for authorized personnel, and you have about 2 seconds to determine which category this is. You make the wrong choice. You step aside, just for a moment, just to let him knock on the door himself, because if he's legitimate, the president will recognize him, and if he's not, you'll intervene. It's a reasonable calculation. It's the kind of split-second risk assessment you've made 1,000 times. He doesn't knock. He opens the door. He steps inside. You move to follow, but you're already too late. You hear the shot before you cross the threshold, a flat crack that doesn't sound like the world ending, but is. You're through the door, in under a second. The man is jumping from the box to the stage. The president is slumped in his chair. Mrs. Lincoln is screaming. There's blood. There's so much blood. You don't chase the assassin. Your job isn't pursuit. Your job is protection. And you've already failed, but maybe you can still do something. You're not a doctor, but you've seen enough field wounds to know this one is fatal. The bullet entered behind his left ear. He's still breathing, but it's the kind of breathing that's just a body, refusing to understand it's already dead. They carry him to a boarding house across the street. You follow because you don't know what else to do. Doctors arrive, cabinet members, generals, people who matter. You stand in the corner because that's where you belong. In the margins, watching, useless. He dies at 7:22 the next morning. You're still there, nobody's dismissed you, and you can't dismiss yourself. The manhunt starts immediately. John Wilkes Booth, actor, Confederate sympathizer, famous enough that people recognize his face, which makes him both easier to find and more dangerous. He's got fans who'll hide him. They track him to Virginia. They corner him in a barn. He refuses to surrender. Someone sets the barn on fire. Someone else shoots him, though later there will be arguments about who and whether he shot himself. He dies 4 hours later, paralyzed and defiant. It doesn't matter. Killing him doesn't undo anything. You're questioned, obviously. How did Booth get past you? Why didn't you stop him? What were you doing at the moment of the shooting? You tell the truth. You made a judgment call. You assessed the threat. You were wrong. They don't charge you with anything because incompetence isn't a crime, but they don't keep you on either. Executive protection requires a level of trust that evaporates the moment you fail this spectacularly. You're dismissed with a handshake and a pension and the kind of polite distance that tells you they wish you'd disappear. You try, You move west because that's where people go when they're running from something. You find work as a guard for a railroad company. Different kind of protection. Trains instead of presidents. You're good at it. Turns out the skills transfer. You're vigilant. You're careful. You never hesitate at doors. But every April 14th, you're back in that hallway. You've played it out 1,000 different ways in your mind. If you'd stopped him at the stairs. If you'd asked for credentials. If you'd simply tackled him when he reached for the door. Any of those choices saves Lincoln. All of them require you to be slightly more paranoid, slightly less human, slightly quicker to assume the worst. You wonder if that's the job's actual requirement. Becoming the kind of person who trusts no one and shoots first. You weren't that person. Maybe that's why you failed. The country moves on. Reconstruction stumbles forward. New presidents take office, and new guards stand outside their doors. And you read about them sometimes in newspapers that reach whatever dusty railroad town you're working in that month. You wonder if they think about what you think about. You wonder if they hesitate at doors. You never marry. You never settle. You just keep moving and guarding and surviving, which is what you've always been good at. Except now survival feels like the punishment instead of the prize. You're 53 when you finally stop running. A nothing town in Kansas. A job guarding a bank that never gets robbed. You rent a room above a saloon. You drink enough to sleep but not enough to forget. You exist in that narrow space between living and haunting. One night, a young man approaches you at the bar. He's heard stories. Is it true you were there? Is it true you could have stopped it? You buy him a drink. You tell him the truth. Yes, you were there. Yes, you could have stopped it. Yes, you live with that every single day. He asks what you learned. You consider the question. You think about all the years of standing in hallways, all the doors you've guarded since, all the threats you've interdicted with the kind of aggressive paranoia you didn't have when it mattered. You think about the ways survival made you hard and failure made you careful, and how neither of those things brought back the man who died 3 feet from where you stood. Nothing useful, you finally say. The young man looks disappointed. He wanted wisdom, a lesson, some kind of redemption arc that makes the tragedy meaningful. But you don't have that for him. You just have the truth. You were a good soldier who became a decent guard who made a single mistake at the worst possible moment. And that's all you'll ever be. He leaves. You finish your drink. You go upstairs to the room you rent, and you lie down in the dark. And you listen to laughter drifting up from the saloon below. It sounds just like a theatre.